Good Saturday morning to you, everybody, and welcome to Legal Notes with Charter Oak Law. I'm Gary Byron, joined this morning with Mary Ann Sharon and Ned Barron. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Morning, Gary.
Good to have you here.
Thank you.
I got to tell you, I'm very excited about this show. I know a little bit about what we're going to be going into, so I can't wait for you to share it. What are we going to be talking about in future episodes of this show?
Well, Gary, what we really want to focus on is the areas of law that we focus on in our practice. And one of the things that, as attorneys meeting with clients, that we have found over the years is that educating our clients is one of the most important things in our job. And we just feel that having an opportunity to be able to educate a wider audience as opposed to one-on-one or with a couple that each of us are individually meeting with, that we have a broader audience that we can communicate with and pass on some knowledge that we think is important to everybody.
Very nice. I want to get to know a little bit about each of you, but they always say ladies before gentlemen. So, Mary Ann, why don't we start with you?
Okay. So, I'm not originally from Connecticut.
Okay.
I came here after law school.
Where are you from?
I'm Massachusetts.
Okay.
So you
Northeast.
can probably pick up the accent.
You're a New Englander.
I am. I have that like Southern New Hampshire twang.
Nothing wrong with that.
So I accepted a judicial clerkship appointment here and then stayed in Connecticut. I've been practicing 35 years.
Oh, wow.
And I started off in a litigation law firm in Hartford. And over time, my practice kind of evolved to what we do now, which is mostly the probate and elder law and those type of pieces. And so when 2009, I went out on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2016, we became Charter Oak Law.
Very nice. Ned, do you have a similar story? Are you from Southern New Hampshire as well? Or
I'm not, Gary. I took a different route. I grew up in Connecticut, but my road to the law was a little more circuitous than Mary Ann's. After high school, I was in the Marine Corps for a few years, and then went to college, and then went into commercial banking. And I was a commercial banker for 13 years.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
And then I had a midlife crisis and decided to go to law school. So went to law school and graduated in 2005 and started practicing at a law firm in Danbury, focusing on estate administration, estate planning, probate, and all that. And worked for them for a while, and then went out on my own and had my own firm for a while until I met Mary Ann one day at a really contentious probate court hearing that lasted a year, I think.
Probably over a year.
Yeah, over a year.
So that's how we met. I was on one side. Ned was actually the role he had.
You're going against each other?
No.
Oh! I was on one side, he was on the other. Like
kind of
strange bedfellows here, you know.
It could have been that way, actually, depending on how, as it was. That's not how it happened. But it was a very contentious probate litigation matter, and I don't know. I think that over time with that case, we realized that we shared certain values about practicing law, about how we wanted to treat and value our client base, what was important to us. And like I said, in 2016, I think that litigation case was in 2011, actually.
Okay.
And then in 2016, we became Charter.
I'm going to ask you both the same question here. Why elder law? So you go to law school. You could have gone into anything. And I know there's estate planning in there as well. And
yeah, you're absolutely right.
Living wills and all of that kind of things. But you could have gone down any law or legal road. What was it about elder law for you that just drew you to it?
I felt that older people need a voice.
Ooh.
Yeah. We're in a society where we don't necessarily value older people always. Mm-hmm. As children, as parents, we want our children to have their own lives, and they end up moving away. And sometimes, from my perspective, is we need to protect them. They are not necessarily a protected class. They are vulnerable. And we see all of these vulnerabilities that come out in whether it's financial abuse and fraud, and other things like that. So for me, it felt really important to, as you start working with them, you just find yourself compelled to be able to do more. And I don't know, I think you might feel the same way.
Yeah, Ned.
I think the vulnerability is probably one of the biggest attractions to me about it. That if you think about it, you're looking at somebody who at one point wasn't vulnerable, that was completely capable, but as we all age, that oftentimes we lose our faculties, or we start to slip, as some people might say. And when you think about the people who would naturally be protecting an elderly person, such as a child or another family member, they're still looking at them and hoping that they're the person that they knew growing up.
That's true.
And so there's that tendency to, if you notice someone slipping, that first of all, you still respect them, right? They're still your parent, so you don't want to tell them, Mom, Dad, you can't manage your checking account any longer.
That's a tough conversation to have,
right?
Wow.
So there is that reluctance by children or by family members to say that, so that the vulnerability can continue on for quite a long time. And in the meantime, as Marianne mentioned about financial exploitation, that is something that was actually part of that case that Marianne and I met on, that there was a lot of money that had one child, of the mother who was who needed significant care, had just taken over things to the exclusion of the other sibling. And then when we got to the bottom of it, there was a lot of money that was missing.
Did they take over as power of attorney? Did they take over their lives more than other siblings? Do you find that, I guess automatically you think of scam artists that would scam the elderly because maybe they're most prone. You always hear this around Christmas time. There's always these different scams going on, and they target senior citizens specifically.
Absolutely.
Because they're not maybe as tech savvy as someone much younger than them. But do you find that it's more family members? Do you find that it's more scam artists, that they're just a random person in someone's computer? Do you find that it's a caretaker, whether it's aging in place or it's institutional type of setting where a caregiver would be an employee of that facility? Or is it a culmination of everything that you find more cases gravitating towards?
I think it's all of the above. But I don't know if you remember, Ned, but in the case that Ned and I met in, there was actually a forged power of attorney.
Oh, wow.
Do you remember?
Oh, how did I forget that one? Yeah.
All right. So there was a power of attorney document in that one. It turned out to be fraudulent. It was forged. But Ned and I, you and I had a pretty recent conversation about how financial abusers, people who take advantage, there was a pattern. And do you remember us talking about it? Go ahead.
I've seen it so many times that it's kind of crazy. It makes me think that there must be some school out there that teaches people how to take advantage of an elderly person. And the pattern kind of goes like this, that the elderly person is in need of assistance. And so either a family member or a non-family member caregiver starts taking care of that person. And then things start happening where they start creating a dynamic between the person needing care, the elderly person.
A special relationship.
Right. Yeah. Right. They do develop that. And then what we've seen happen is that then that person starts telling the elderly person that their family doesn't care about them, that they're the only ones that can really take care of them. In the meantime, when family members are calling, they're being told, no, they can't come to the phone now. No, they don't want to talk to you. And it's this escalation, and it's a way of isolating the elderly person to make them 100% dependent upon them. And then they can do what they want to do and say, well, I need more, I need money, or I need this. And it's crazy how that pattern happens time and time again. It's
You're manipulating them. You're taking advantage of them. You're saying, well, I don't see Sally here or Bobby here.
Exactly
I'm the
right.
one that takes care of you every day. They can, but they're choosing not to be here. I don't want to get crazy here, but maybe I should be getting a little bit more from your will.
What happens is that the people who are good at it are very patient. And so they'll start off, a day like today, and they'll start off and say, do you want me to help you brush off your car or do the stoop for you and bring you some soup? Because do you need anything at the grocery store? I'm heading out to the grocery store. And so you start off with this very, kind, let me just do a few things for you. And it's like, it's so sad that your child lives in New York City and can't do these things for you. But I'm here. And if you ever need anything, just remember I'm here for you. Right? And so the pattern starts that way. And then the elderly person starts relying on them. And that's when it kicks in. Because they're like, give me some money for groceries. Right? It doesn't start, they don't jump to put me in your will. They start off with
something very innocuous, just,
Yeah. Let me help you with your balancing your checkbook.
There you go.
Right? It looks like you're having trouble with that, so I can help you out. And
do you find that these individuals, and I'm talking about the perpetrator here, are they've done this before? Is there a pattern where they like to help out various elderly and go from one person to another? Or how do they even have that kind of access, I guess? Is it always a family member? Maybe I should have asked you it that way.
No, it's not. I think that there is as Marianne said before, that there is a mix of family members and caregivers who are giving care in the home. Those to me are the two main people that or types of people that we've run across. Regarding whether there are repeat offenders, so to speak. I don't know. I don't know anything about that because, I don't know, thankfully that we have not had to run across a case where there's been, we've had a client who's been financially exploited by an individual and then down the road, and then that's resolved. And then down the road, we find another person who's been exploited by that same person. We haven't run into that. So my hope is, once they've done it once and they got caught, then that's it. And then we move on.
You talked about how you both had very different lives growing up in different, one in Connecticut, one in New Hampshire. And that you, I guess, met during this very famous trial that you bring up. But how did Charter Oak Law actually end up coming to fruition?
So after the case was over, we still were in touch with each other. Most of the time, it was like, hey, I have this issue, or what do you think of this? Right? Those type of things.
Bouncing different things off each other.
We just kind of realized that we were in a place where we wanted to grow. And there is something to be said where when you can partner with someone and team, you have the ability to do more. Right? And that's what we wanted to do. I wanted to do more. Ned wanted to do more. And so here we are.
Where are you located?
We have 3 offices. Our main office, where our support staff is in Bloomfield. And we also have a satellite office in Danbury. And that's actually where I was practicing when Mary and I met. Most of still to this day, I'd say the majority of my clients are still in the Danbury area, but I do have clients in the Bloomfield area. And we also have another satellite, but much smaller, in Norfolk, in Litchfield County.
Oh, yeah.
Which is the town that I live in. And, for me, my commute from Norfolk, which I've lived there for the last 3 years, and I love it. It's a beautiful town. And
it's a quiet area, isn't it? Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
But so I'd like to develop more of a practice there, and so maybe I don't have to drive the hour back and forth every day right now as I do.
Well, we're on a station that I think we'll cover in Norfolk in Litchfield County, WSNG. Very nice.
Excellent.
Yeah, so shout out to our folks over on that. So you're really all throughout the state. Do you only do elder law, or are there other types of law that you practice?
So we try to specialize in probate and probate administration. We have estate planning is a huge part of what we do. And that covers anything from wills, powers of attorney. There's all sorts of documents. Medicaid, which is Title 19 planning. We do some real estate, certainly. Real estate's been big in the last year. We have I don't know, did I miss anything? Probate litigation, which we talked about, and how we met, things like that.
Living wills, I guess.
Yeah, well, living will is part of the estate planning piece, sure.
Talk a little bit about estate planning. What does that entail?
Well, estate planning, interestingly enough, I think the average person thinks estate planning is wills, right? What's going to happen after I die with my assets, and that is certainly a component of it. But one of the things that we've already talked a little bit about today is also incapacity, and to us, that is just as important, or maybe even more important, to our clients, and they may not know it when they first meet with us, because again, they're thinking, what happens to my assets after I die? But for us, we're thinking, well, what happens to you if you are unable to manage your own either financial affairs or your own medical decision making? And so the documents that we prepare as part of a package may certainly include a will, but then we're going to add on other documents such as a financial power of attorney, such as appointment of a healthcare representative, such as a living will, as you already mentioned, Gary. Also, such as an advanced dementia directive, which is a document that we'll talk about, I'm sure.
Yeah, we got to talk about that someday.
Yeah.
Someday soon. I'm intrigued by that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But and just to go back to the kind of the death aspect, or actually the incapacity also, is that besides drafting wills for our clients, which again is the document that distributes assets after death, we also create revocable living trusts. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that term, but basically it's a way of creating a trust that during your lifetime would allow somebody who you appointed in your document to be able to step into your shoes and manage your finances, the assets that are in the trust during your lifetime, and also to manage and distribute those after your death. The really nice part about it is that you can avoid probate. If the assets that otherwise would be probate assets that would be controlled by the will are in the trust, then you avoid the whole probate process.
And the probate process, from what I understand, is pretty lengthy.
Yep. I think on average, in Connecticut, it's about a year.
Is that right? Wow. So even longer than I thought.
Yeah.
Folks, you are listening to Legal Notes with Charter Oak Law. We're talking with Mary Ann Sharon and Ned Byron. There is a difference, though, between a living will and a living trust, right? Does it have to do with taxes or no? Am I off base here?
Well, sometimes we create trusts for taxes, for estate tax avoidance. Okay, so that's one of the things for taxes. But a living will has to do with pulling the plug. So if you are in a persistent vegetative state, you are permanently unconscious, the doctor says you are dying.
And there's no chance of coming back to.
Well, I mean, we all hear about, right, those near-death experiences and things like that. But generally the doctor's like, they're shutting down. Your organs are shutting down and you show no behavioral response. Under those circumstances, do you want to continue to be hooked up to life support? That's what a living will is. And so oftentimes people will say, yes, my children are going to keep me hooked up until the bitter end. But most people really say, if that's my circumstance, please let me go.
But there's usually religious reasons why people would go naturally as well, rather than pulling the plug.
Certainly. Everyone has their own reasons. Sometimes it is religious reasons, and sometimes it is just a personal preference. Sometimes people just want to believe in the miracle and will say that I really want to be on life support for as long as possible. So, but that's what a living will is.
As opposed to a living estate.
That's right. Living trust.
Living trust.
I'm
right.
sorry, living trust. Pardon me.
You're going to learn.
I will.
You are going
it's
to
only,
learn.
Listen, this is only the pilot. This is show one.
Okay.
Yes, you're right. I do learn the lingo. If I can learn lingo on a financial show, which is way over my head in the first few episodes, now I think I could go work for the company.
Right.
I kid you not, neither.
There you go. So,
But and of course, all right. So that's a living will because you're alive, hence living will. And then of course there's wills for when you pass. And who is that like I hate to say this way, but like a who gets what? And
that's exactly right.
okay.
Yeah, a will really, for most people, a will does two main things. One is that it allows you to name the person who will have the legal authority to manage your assets after your death. And that person's called an executor. And the second thing that it allows you to do is to instruct the executors how to distribute your assets at your death. A third thing that a will could also do would be if you had minor children. And so you had a couple, and at this point, both parents are now unable to be by death under a will. Then they would not be able to still manage their minor children's lives. So It allows you to name a guardian, to raise your children until they turn 18.
Nice.
Yeah.
You'd mentioned, you mentioned estate planning. You mentioned probate, estate administration and probate litigation. I know Mary Ann did elder law. You guys were both talking about that. Yeah. Special needs planning. These are real delicate, very delicate issues to be discussing.
Yeah, I really feel like this practice area is the most personal of areas because people have to tell you everything. They have to tell you if they don't like their kid. They have to tell you if there's a problem. And so special needs planning, of course, Ned and I, again, were just talking about this. I don't know what family doesn't have another family member or extended family member who isn't in some way affected or has special needs, right? And that can be obviously a cognitive disability, but it can be physical, a mental condition, could be mental health, anything like that, emotional issues, right? So we run the gamut, and a parent, there's nothing harder for a parent to figure out how do I help this child? And so a special needs trust is a special type of trust where you would able to help that child through adulthood, through their life, and make sure that there is something there to help him or her.
That wouldn't necessarily even fall under looking out after your parent. I mean, right? A special need. You could have children with special needs.
Correct. That's most of the time.
That's what you were referring.
Children.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's tough because as parents begin to age out and they're leaving what theoretically can be a 55-year-old adult with the mental capacity of a 12-year-old, and mom and dad aren't going to live forever. So where would this, I don't want to say child, this adult.
It's a huge issue.
Yeah.
Certainly in older generations, the child always lived with a parent. And then when that parent is no longer able or dies, then we have a huge issue. And Ned and I are both pretty comfortable in our practice with having to help those individuals provide housing and supportive services, and so that they will be taken care of.
And there's nonprofits out there as well, right, that are set up that ARC or some of these that.
Sure. Yeah. There are some fantastic agencies that are providing housing or
Oak Hill. I'm trying to think some of the other ones.
Sure. Yeah. They're providing housing or work, for people who are disabled.
Yeah.
One of the most important things about in estate planning and doing special needs trusts is that most people who are disabled, who have these issues, are receiving benefits from the state or federal governments. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes they're needs-based. And if they're needs-based, that means that if they have the means, then they don't qualify. Meaning if they have their own assets, then they're not going to get Medicaid for their medical, or they're not going to get their housing subsidized, and in some cases with, let's say, potentially Social Security disability, right? That could also be impacted by that. So a special needs trust is a way to leave assets to somebody who has special needs, a disabled person, and still allow them to qualify for these government programs, these needs-based programs. But the funds are there to support them for the needs of theirs that are above what the state and federal governments are providing.
You're providing a lot of information, and especially what I've just mentioned a moment ago. Estate planning and probate and elder law and special needs that you were just referring to a moment ago. I would imagine that we're going to get kind of down into the nitty gritty with these issues over the next 6 months. Before I wrap things up here, can you give us a teaser, some other things that maybe you'd like to get into over the next 6 months, other than the topics I just brought up? I only got a few seconds, but
no, that'll take us more than 6 months to talk about.
Okay. All right. No, I think, listen, this is fascinating. The thing is about this is that it's not an issue that, sadly, that most families discuss. It's not a typical topic of conversation. And I think it's for obvious reasons. It's very difficult, or awkward maybe is the better word, to initiate. When? How? Who's included in the conversation? So hopefully if anybody can get something out of this show, it's that, maybe this is the impetus for you to sit down with your family members and have this discussion. You've put it off. You've thought about it. It's been in the back of your mind. And you're like, it's kind of like that diet. I'll get to it. I'm going to do it. But this is the perfect opportunity, particularly as we go forward. I'd like to thank you for listening, because and we hope that you're able to join us each and every week, each and every Saturday morning at 7 o'clock for Legal Notes with both Mary Ann, Sharon, and Ned Byron. By the way, if you'd like to reach them, very easy to do. 860-570-1229. Again, it's 860-570-1229. Check them out online as well, charteroaklaw.com. It's that simple, www.charteroaklaw.com. And by the way, if you've got a question, maybe you'd like to have answered right on these very airwaves, who knows, could be even next week, simply write down this email address, legalnotes@charteroaklaw.com. Once again, legalnotes@charteroaklaw.com. For Mary Ann, Sharon, and Ned Byron, I'm Gary Byron. Thank you so much for listening. Until next Saturday, have a good one, everybody. So long.